This video is going to continue on with my saga of criticism against the nuclear priesthood, or the nuclear industry as most commonly referred to. I've got some clips that I'm going to use from a 2009, the date is very important, 2009 TV show that was on Chernobyl. I'm not going to tag it or anything. It's just going to be find it as you may, because these kind of things. Oh, what do you call it? Freedom of Information Act, or free use, educational purpose, not for profit. I don't own or any of this. So I'm going to do the first clip, and then I'm going to throw in some commentary.
And that's only a short period as well. That's short time.
15-20 minutes.
This is physically as close as I'm allowed to get to reactor number 4. Probably about 150 meters away. Not very far at all. On the night of April 26, 1986, at 1:23 a.m., reactor number 4 here at Chernobyl exploded in a catastrophic cascading failure of its systems that caused an explosion that released more radiation than at least 100 equivalent Hiroshima bombs. 31 people lost their lives in the initial fire and explosion, and then thousands more in the years afterwards from cancer and other diseases. So this is by far the worst nuclear reactor accident of all time, and it's the only level 7 nuclear event that has ever occurred. So that sort of puts things in perspective. This structure on here is the sarcophagus that was built to contain all the radiation. Gonna do a time check here. Not much time left. It's so creepy standing here. You can't smell it, you can't see it, you can't feel it, but it's there. The radiation is surrounding us, it's permeating your body. They tell me 15 minutes is safe here, but... So 560 years worth of radiation right now. Sergey? Time check? We're out of time? When the man with the stopwatch says it's time to go, it's time to go.
So some of the significance of this, there's varying levels. One, the fact that it was 2009, and this is the only at that time class 7 event, and the total meltdown process before they were able to carcophagize it was about 6 days. So one important thing, GE is the largest manufacturer of nuclear reactors. As such, they built Fukushima. Fukushima plant is a GE design. So was San Onofre right here, that they had to shut down because of very grave concerns. But the company tried to fight it from being shut down because it was going to hurt their profit margin. That's the Americans. So as such, okay, now, here's the catch. Everything that they say about Chernobyl is retrospect. We've got the 2009 ability to look back. The official records are very interesting. So, take into account that Fukushima, that's his reactor number 4, and it had a containment unit, and it blew off. Fukushima, the meltdown, the initial meltdown began March 11th, 2011. Okay, we're now in 3 years, 3 years past that. Since that was in Daiichi reactor number 1, since that time, the complexity of the situation and the dangers of the radiation, the dangerous levels of radiation being emitted, and the difficulty of being able to reach particular areas that need to be addressed, there's been a domino effect, not to get to Vietnam or anything, but a domino effect in which now reactor number 2 and reactor number 3 are likewise in the same state as reactor number 1. The significance of reactor number 3 is that reactor number 3 was a nice little experiment I believe imposed by the nuclear priesthood on Japan unwittingly, in which there's an experimental fuel being used called MOX, M-O-X fuel. And this is this was an attempt to come up with some kind of profitable, not socially responsible or anything, but just a pure money scheme to make money off of the massive amounts of radioactive waste that's created from each reactor. I think each reactor produces like 100,000 tons of radioactive waste each year. And that's building up. You get this whole Yucca Mountain debate and people dumping it off of Somalia, all these countries using the absence of Somalia as a country to dump the radioactive material into the ocean in Somalia, so on that side of the ocean. But so what you have is, and on top of that, this is built on the coast. So the primary way of preventing this, what they're saying is they're preventing it from being a full-scale meltdown, which means that the fuel rods actually melt, and as they melt, massive more amounts of radiation. What they're saying, the solution that they've found to prevent that from happening is they're keeping it cool while these are all broken, and there's no pump system, there's no water system, there's no containment system available, and it's too dangerous for human beings to get too close to the vicinity because they'll die within a matter of hours. Is that they have been using the ocean water, and pumping it into these three things, and at the same time, without any way of stopping it for the most part. They claim to have built ice walls underground, but everything's cracked, and then the pressure of the water drives it even deeper into the ground, and likewise spills it back out into the ocean. So for over 3 years, you've had what would have been Chernobyl level radiation out of 3 reactors for the most part, on the sum of basically every day being stopped from going into the air only by the fact that it's been being diverted into water, so, and then pumped into the ocean. So that's where the radiation of Chernobyl is said to be 100 times more than Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. That's an important detail. I don't think he meant to misrepresent it. I think it's just a production error. But I've said this for a while, and this video I just saw the other day just strokes my ego that this is most likely, Fukushima is probably around 10,000 times more radiation exposure than both the bombs combined. So now I also want to proceed to the next clip, and I want to get into the Santa Susana Field Laboratory right here in the lovely San Fernando. Oh, actually it's in Ventura County, but the most grossly affected area has been the San Fernando Valley, which is Los Angeles County.
Thousands that died as a result of the accident. Although the secretive Soviet government was able to hide much of the information about the death toll, the numbers are still staggering.
Officially, less than 300,000, and unofficially about 500,000 died after this catastrophe.
When Mother Nature puts her hands on the earth, the effects usually heal over time. Storms pass, floodwaters recede, forests regrow. And even though man-made disasters will eventually be wiped clean by nature, how long will it take?
So to cut to the chase, I want to make it a very formal point that the monuments, it's interesting. First of all, Chernobyl's in the Ukraine, okay? It's not in Russia. So I think it's significant to note that there are monuments to the people that died. And there are two, when she says the official numbers, there are 2 ways of looking at it. One, Russia, the Russian government, along with the nuclear industry as a whole, the nuclear priesthood, as I call them, still cite their official numbers, and their studies show that something along the lines of about 6,000 people at the most died as a result of Chernobyl. And then in the very extreme cases, according to them, about 25,000 in the sum of all sums beyond time and distance and space have died as a result of it. So when she says the official, that's basically the Ukrainian government, who has, as we see in the current situation, no sympathies for the Russian government and no ties to the nuclear industry. You can also see this in Sweden, because Sweden was as far away as it is from Chernobyl, because of the way that the winds were carried, was still affected to this day. And so Sweden, they do a lot of studies, and that's where I've learned a lot about radiation poisoning. One of the most phenomenal things that I've learned about radiation poisoning is that cancers and tumors are the least common health effects to be experienced, and you have nervous disorders, immune system disorders, and developmental disorders, which include spontaneous abortions or miscarriages, as commonly referred to. So as such, I want to point out too that what you see is what you get in the nuclear industry is, again, they'll contest that the amount of people, 300 to 600 to a half a million, 300,000 to half a million people died as a result of this. They'll say that that's ludicrous and that's absurd. Why? Because this makes them money. So this brings me to right here. Now, from this, I'm just going to read a little quick from this article that they're saying this is the official report that has to do with, again, the nuclear priesthood's take on nuclear accidents that happened right in the United States soil, in California, at the expense of the surrounding communities, which happen to be Ventura County and Los Angeles County, and most, like I said before, San Fernando Valley, because it's a wind corridor and most of it blows. But Simi Valley, which is the highest densely populated city of police in the world, if I'm not mistaken, has the water has been very, very, and they don't get it. They're trying to bypass, in my opinion, their problem onto us. But just to give you an example of, Chernobyl was one event. This is what happened here. Throughout the years, but this article is stating these happenings while at the same time reaffirming, so to speak, or affirming, or trying to affirm or purport that despite all of these incidents or events, there has never been any health. Again, they're citing what NASA's presenting, because NASA's trying to lead the cleanup. They're citing no health effects ever. But these are the events that took place, and these are official records. Again, this is NASA's official reports released to the public. Throughout the years, approximately 10 low-power nuclear reactors operated at the Santa Susana Field Laboratory, in addition to several critical facilities, a sodium burn pit in which sodium-coated objects were burned in an open pit, a plutonium fuel fabrication facility, a uranium carbide fuel fabrication facility, and purportedly the largest hot lab used for remotely cutting up irradiated nuclear fuel facility in the United States at the time. Irradiated nuclear fuel from other Atomic Energy Commissions, AEC, and Department of Energy, DOE, facilities from around the country were shipped to Santa Susana Field Laboratory to be decladded and examined. The hot lab suffered a number of fires involving radioactive materials. In July 1959, the site suffered a partial nuclear meltdown that has been named the worst in the U.S. history, releasing an undisclosed amount of radiation, but thought to be more than that of 3 Mile Island disaster in 1979, which otherwise you'll find is noted as the third worst nuclear accident according to the IAEA. Another radioactive fire occurred in 1971 involving combustible primary reactor coolant, NAC, contaminated with mixed fusion products. At least 4 of the 10 nuclear reactors suffered accidents, and the AE6 reactor experienced the release of fission gases in March 1959. The SRE, that's a sodium reactor experiment, experienced a power excursion and partial meltdown in July 1959. The SNAP 8ER in 1964 experienced damage to 80% of its fuel, and the SNAP 8DR in 1969 experienced similar damage with 1/3 of its fuel. Okay, so it's important to understand. Here's a catch. One event, just one event, you had to understand. In 1959, in July 1959, the site suffered a partial nuclear meltdown that has been named the worst in nuclear history. That's just one event. And that was already deemed, though not publicly or popularly educated, to be the worst nuclear disaster in U.S. history. But that alone qualifies as the worst nuclear disaster. This is, that little site right there is where all of these events took place. By distinguishing the events and sub-departmentalizing them, you can take it down to all kinds of little, this happened, this, a little bit of this happened here, a little bit of this happened there, a little bit of this happened there. But it all happened on one site, and it did happen over a span of time, very about till 1969, were the root causes while they were doing these things. So, what's my point? I lost my point, to be honest with you. I don't even know what my point is anymore. I guess my point is their point. I support everything they say. And to clarify, contrary to popular held beliefs, none of the studies, they did 11 studies, confirm connections between operations and off-site or worker health effects. So I think in the sum, I'm going to admit that my theories are paranoia, and that they're baseless, and that they're just meant to defame and discredit and mock and be mean-spirited towards good, honest, hard-working Americans that are doing their best to protect the public safety by providing clean, safe, low-cost energy. And towards that end, sure, some mistakes have been made, but you know, you look at the consequences of Chernobyl. At least it wasn't that bad, and luckily it was so much less than Chernobyl that it had zero effects whatsoever. One of the interesting differences too is that where Chernobyl was nowhere near the vicinity of what could be called a major population epicenter. Santa Susana Field Laboratory is about 23 miles away from downtown Los Angeles. Which even if you go back at that time, I'm sure probably had 2 million to 3 million people living in it. And now has something about 12 or 14 million people. So I guess you can take your pick. I don't know what you can pick though, because there's not really a choice to be had in it. But kudos.